In the heart of an African town, where the market overflowed with colorful goods and the air buzzed with the chatter of traders, there lived a man named Kwesi. He was the wealthiest man in the region, his fortune as vast as the rolling plains that surrounded the town. His mansion, towering and grand, stood at the town's edge, guarded by tall iron gates. But despite his riches, Kwesi was known by all as the Rich Madman, title whispered with a mix of awe and fear. The reason for this nickname wasn't just his wealth, his strange behavior. Kwesi was an odd man, to say the least. He walked around town wearing the finest clothes, but he never smiled. His eyes always had a faraway look, as if he was searching for something that no one else could see. He would speak to himself as he walked, mumbling words that made no sense to anyone but him. Children in the town would run away when they saw him coming, afraid of the stories they had heard. It was said that Kwesi's mansion was filled with secret, dark secret, no one dared to uncover. Townspeople speculated endlessly, their imaginations running wild with possibility. Some said that Kwesi had made a pact with spirits to gain his wealth, while others believed that he had committed terrible deeds to protect his fortune. Despite the rumors, no one could deny that Kwesi was generous with his money. He donated to the local school, paid for the construction of new roads, and even sponsored the annual village festival. But this generosity only made the people more suspicious. Why was he so eager to give away his wealth? What was he hiding? Kwesi's mansion was the most mysterious place in town. It stood at the edge of the forest, surrounded by thick trees and overgrown bushes. The mansion itself was a grand structure with tall windows that seemed to watch the town like eyes in the night. No one ever saw Kwesi invite guests into his home, and the mansion remained dark and silent, even during the day. One day, a young journalist named Amma decided that she would uncover the truth about Kwesi. Amma was known for her bravery and curiosity, and she wasn't afraid of the stories that scared others away. She had grown up hearing tales of the rich madman, and she was determined to find out what really went on behind those tall iron gates. Amma began her investigation by talking to the townspeople. She listened to their stories, nodding as they described Kwesi's odd behavior and the strange sounds that sometimes came from his mansion at night. But Amma knew that to get to the bottom of this mystery, she would have to get closer to Kwesi himself. One afternoon, Amma waited near the market where Kwesi often walked. She watched as he moved through the stalls, his expression as blank as ever. She noticed that he never looked directly at anyone, as if the world around him didn't exist. As Kwesi passed by, Amma gathered her courage and approached him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Kwesi," Amma said politely, her voice steady. "I'm Amma, a journalist. I would like to talk to you about your work in the town." Kwesi paused, his eyes slowly focusing on Amma. For a moment there was silence. Then, in a low, almost whispering voice, he said, "I work. What is there to talk about?" Amma smiled, determined to win his trust. "People here speak highly of you," she lied slightly. "They appreciate all that you've done for the town. I want to share your story with them, to help them understand you better." Kwesi stared at Amma for a long time, his gaze unnerving. Just when she thought he might walk away, he nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "Come to my house tomorrow at noon." Amma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to agree so easily, but she knew this was her chance. She thanked Kwesi and watched as he walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. The townspeople who had witnessed the exchange looked at Amma with a mix of admiration and pity, whispering that she was brave, foolish. The next day, Amma approached Kwesi's mansion with a mix of excitement and fear. The iron gates creaked open as she pushed them, and she walked down the long, winding path to the front door. The mansion loomed above her, windows dark and imposing. Amma took a deep breath and knocked on the door. To her surprise, the door swung open immediately, as if someone had been waiting for her. A tall, stern-faced man stood in the doorway. He didn't say a word, just gestured for Amma to enter. She stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The air inside the mansion was cool and smelled faintly of something she couldn't quite place, something old and musty. The man led her down a long hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she walked, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The end of the hallway was a large, dimly lit room where Kwesi was seated at a grand wooden table. He looked up as Amma entered, his expression unreadable. "Sit," Kwesi said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Alma sat down, trying to steady her nerves. She took out her notebook and pen, ready to start the interview. They began talking about Kwesi's life, his childhood, his education, his rise to wealth. Kwesi's voice was monotone, and he offered no personal details, sticking strictly to the facts. Alma listened intently, scribbling notes, but she knew she went into the heart of the matter. She needed to dig deeper. Finally, Alma decided to take a risk. "Mr. Kwesi," she began cautiously, "there are many rumors about you in the town. People say that your wealth comes from unusual means. They wonder why you live alone in this big house, why you never have guests." Kwesi's hand, which had been resting on the table, twitched slightly. He looked at Alma, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, something dark and troubling. "People will always talk," he said softly. "They see what they want to see." Alma leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "And what about the noises? The strange sounds people hear coming from your mansion at night? What do you have to say about those?" Kwesi's expression hardened. "You're very brave, Miss Alma, to ask such questions," he said, his voice now cold. "But some things are better left alone." Alma felt a chill run down her spine, but she pressed on. "Please, Mr. Kwesi, I want to understand. Why do people call you the Rich Madman? What is it that you're hiding?" There was a long silence. Kwesi stared at Alma, his face unreadable. Then, without warning, he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the thick forest that surrounded the mansion. "Do you know what it's like to live with a secret, Miss Alma?" he asked quietly. "A secret so dark that it consumes you?" Alma didn't respond, her heart racing as she sensed she was finally about to uncover the truth. Kwesi turned back to her, his eyes filled with a strange mix of sadness and fear. "I was not always this way," began, his voice low and haunted. "Once I was a young man with dreams like anyone else, but those dreams were taken from me by a curse." Alma's eyes widened. "Curse?" she repeated, hardly believing what she was hearing. Kwesi nodded. "Yes, a curse, one that was placed on me by someone I trusted, a man who was like a brother to me. We both loved the same woman, but she chose me. My friend couldn't accept that, so he turned to dark magic, cursed me, saying that I would have all the wealth in the world but would be haunted by spirits for the rest of my life." Alma felt a shiver run through her. The town's rumors had hinted at something supernatural, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. "And the spirits?" she asked hesitantly. Kwesi's face twisted in pain. "They're here, in this house. They whisper to me at night, reminding me of my past, my failures. I've tried to rid myself of them, but nothing works. That's why I live alone, why I don't have guests. I don't want anyone else to suffer because of me." Alma sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. The rich madman wasn't mad at all. He was a man tormented by a curse he couldn't escape. "Why haven't you told anyone?" she asked softly. "Maybe someone could help you." Kwesi shook his head. "No one can help me, Miss Alma. I've accepted my fate. My wealth is a prison, and these spirits are my jailers. The best I can do is try to do some good with my money, to ease my conscience, though it never seems to work." Alma felt a pang of sympathy for Kwesi. Despite his wealth, he was a man trapped in his own personal hell. But she also knew that his story needed to be told, not just for the town's sake, for his own. "Mr. Kwesi," Alma said gently, "I believe your story can help others understand you. Maybe it can even bring you some peace. Would you allow me to share it?" Kwesi looked at her, his expression weary. For a moment he seemed to be considering her offer. Then, with a sigh, he nodded. "Do what you must, Miss Alma, but remember, this curse is mine alone to bear." Alma left the mansion that day with a heavy heart. She had uncovered Kwesi's dark secret, but it wasn't the kind of story she had expected. It was a tale of loss, betrayal, and unimaginable suffering. As she walked back to town, she couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the man who had been labeled as the rich madman. When Alma's story was published, it caused a sensation in the town. People were shocked to learn the truth about Kwesi and his curse. Some pitied him, while others feared him even more. But for the first time, people began to see Kwesi not just as a madman, but as a man who had been deeply wronged. Despite the newfound understanding, Kwesi continued to live in his mansion, alone with his spirits. He still walked through the town, his eyes distant and his expression blank. But now, when the townspeople saw him, they would nod respectfully, acknowledging the burden he carried. Alma visited Kwesi from time to time, bringing him small gifts or just sitting with him in silence. She knew that there was little she could do to ease his pain. She hoped that her presence brought him some comfort. Over time, she became one of the few people Kwesi trusted, and he would occasionally share more stories of his past with her. Years passed, and the town grew and changed. Kwesi remained the same. His wealth continued to fund the town's projects, and his mansion remained as mysterious as ever. But the legend of the rich madman slowly faded, replaced by the true story of Kwesi, the man who had everything, but was haunted by his own past. In the end, Kwesi found a measure of peace, knowing that his story had been told. He may have been cursed, but he was no longer misunderstood. And as for Amma, she learned that sometimes the most important stories aren't about uncovering the truth, but about understanding the people behind the rumors. Kwesi's mansion still stands at the edge of the forest, a silent reminder of a man who lived with a secret so dark that it consumed him. But now, when the wind rustles through the trees and the shadows grow long, the townspeople no longer fear the mansion. Instead, they remember the story of Kwesi, the rich madman with a heart full of sorrow, and they honor his memory with the respect he had earned. Amma continued her work as a journalist, telling the stories of those who couldn't speak for themselves. But she never forgot Kwesi, the man who taught her that even the richest people can be the poorest in spirit, and that sometimes understanding is the greatest gift you can give someone.